So the first calculation that I want somebody to do. Okay, you guys are all good? Are we good? Are we live? Oh, okay, you didn't tell me. Like, okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa bihi nasta'in wal aqibatu lil muttaqin wa la udwana illa ala adh-dhalimin nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim tasliman kathira. So, who's got the calculators? Raise your hands. Okay, you all got access to calculators. That's great. Awesome. Okay, so 29 years. How many days is this? How many days would that be? 29 years. 10,585. Good. 10,500. That is 29 times what? 29 times 365. That is equal to what? 10,000? 10,580. So you remember this number. Okay? And this is all going to come in the end, but you remember this number. Okay? Next, that group. I'm going to give you guys another number. Okay? You guys ready? Guys ready? Okay. So the next group, so this is the primary number. I need you to find out if the number is 11 million. If you have the number which is 11 million. Okay? 11 million X. Whatever it is for now. Something was built, 11 million of those quantities, 11 million masks, 11 million watches, whatever. Think of it right now, 11 million. Over 29 years, how many people, how many masks were created in a day? Let's take 11 million masks, and over 29 years, how many masks were created in a day? That group. I need you guys to give an answer for that. The next group, who's ready? That group. Okay. Wake up group on the left. Okay, you guys ready? Okay, keep that number, I'm going to come back to you guys. Okay, 57,000 product X, whatever that product is, over 29 years, how many products he made in a day? How many products were made? If the products were 57,000, how many products were made in a day? Okay, you all got those numbers? Okay, now keep these numbers in mind as I begin the story, because it's important for you guys to have the context of what I'm about to begin. Okay, so for people who are coming next week is our last week, and then we'll take a 2 weeks break, and then we'll begin. Next week is going to be a movie night. Movie night in a sense that, you know, remember the person we talked about, which was Umar Sinan, the Turkish architect? We are going to watch a documentary on his life. So we'll be putting it up here, trying to figure out the sound system. So instead of me doing a session, we'll close it off with watching the documentary in English on him, and then again, as usual, we'll grab food. There's going to be a little bit of a change in our food distribution today, just because of the rise of Omicron virus and stuff like that. So the management over here, we decided we'll provide food. Everybody's going to get food. Assalamu alaikum. Do you want to do the lecture? Do you want the mic? He's sad? Sad for what? That it's going to end? Oh. You should come and sit here. Be so much fun. Okay, so we have ordered some fresh shawarmas from Zaim. Okay, we'll be getting shawarmas over here today, but each family will get, you know, number of shawarmas you guys have, and then they've actually closed and sanitized the whole cafeteria and stuff. So we'll distribute it. You'll get the shawarmas. Luckily, happens to be the weather is good outside. We can still go out and eat. But again, next week we'll do the same. We'll have takeaway type of a meal. We can't eat in the masjid here anyways because of that, but we'll watch the movie together. Okay? Now, I was supposed to do the story of Umar Mukhtar. How many of you know what Umar Mukhtar, who Umar Mukhtar is? Anyone? Okay. The Lion of the Desert. Yes. Why was he called the Lion of the Desert? Because in 1882, they were actually traveling towards Sudan, and back in the day in 1800s, they still had lions roaming in Sudan. And he actually saw a lion, so the entire caravan, they said, you know what, let's leave a camel for the lion and let's all retreat. The lion will come and take the camel, and it'll be gone. And Umar Mukhtar, he said, nope, that's not the case. I'm going to go kill the lion. So he's like, this lion is going to eat meat here, then he's going to come and attack our tent, and he's going to come. Like, if he's roaming around in these lands, and if it knows there's food here, it's not going to be one camel. It's going to be one camel, then one human, then stuff. We got to, either we make sure that he's gone. So he actually went and fought the lion, true story. Like, there was around 1,800 people that actually saw, 1,700 people in the army that actually saw this. He went and fought a lion, killed the lion, brought the head of the lion back to people, and from there they named him Lion of the Desert. Okay? Now, we were supposed to do his story, but there's a beautiful movie on his life. It's called The Lion of the Desert. So you should all, with your family, you can watch it. It was made in 1982, 1800, 1982 or 1983, right when I was born, somewhere around that time. So watch the movie with the family. I think you'll get a very clear picture of his story. Okay, so can we have, I know he's roaming around and he's enjoying his life, but kids have a tendency to walk out. We won't know what sounds he's going to be making out there. Okay, so today, instead of Umar Mukhtar, I decided to do a relevant figure that happened to live in our lifetimes. He passed away, rahimahullah. And he happened to live during our lifetimes. He actually studied in Canada, right? He studied in Canada. He has multiple medical journal entries about internal medicine under his name in Canadian Sciences. A specialist in his all regards, as well as a very famous da'iyah, a caller to Islam in Africa. At his hands, a lot of accomplishments took place. We're going to go through this. So we're going to go through his childhood, his life, his coming to Canada, building one of the first masjids in Montreal, and all of those, inshallah, we're going to go through, because there's going to be a lot relevant to people today. And you can go and watch his janazah video. His janazah video is actually available on YouTube. You can even watch him. Okay? All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So today we're going to be talking about a very famous da'iyah who passed away in 2013, 15th of August 2013, by the name of Sheikh Rahman Hamoud As-Sumayyit. Sheikh Rahman Hamoud As-Sumayyit. He was born in 1947, 15th October, just a few months after Pakistan came into existence. And he was a very renowned figure after his death. Nobody knew about his accomplishments until after his death. He didn't have an Instagram page, he didn't have a Facebook page, he didn't go around the world telling, hey man, this is the latest burger I ate. Right? Look at this amazing ice cream I'm having. Right? The boba tea, right? Like whatever it is, right? He didn't go around. He was focused on doing the work. So we're going to go through his early life. He was born, Abdurrahman al-Sumayyit, he was born in Al-Sumayyit, which is a very famous qabila in Kuwait. And he was born in Kuwait, and this is small, Kuwait is very small. So the city of Kuwait, the country of Kuwait, it's all the same. If you go to Kuwait, 35 minutes, you're done the entire country. So it's not much there to Kuwait. So he was born in Kuwait. He grew up around 1947. They mentioned that until the age of 7, he had a weird habit. So this habit has been mentioned by his uncles. This has been mentioned by his aunts who relate his story. His other cousins who saw him do this, like his own age cousins who are still alive today, many of them. So they say that, we would see Abdurrahman, he would go in the middle of the desert, in the hot, scorching suns of the desert. Like he would go out in the desert, he would grab a stick, any stick that he can find in the desert, and he would walk in the desert, and he would go sit down on sand dunes and talk to animals and snakes and lizards. And they would be like, what did he say? He would just sit there and start having conversation with the snake that is sitting there in the desert. And he's like, was absolutely not afraid of anything. And many times they mentioned that we would be playing with Abdurrahman, and during the playtime, he would just like kind of like daydream. He would get into these daydreams. And Many times his daydream was he would dream of this land that had a lot of animals, and this entire pasture is filled with animals. This is what he was dreaming, right, as a child. And then he would see a gleam of light, like he would see like a light that is emanating somewhere in between all of these animals, and this light is rising all the way to the sky. And many times he would see this vision, and he would wake up from this vision. He would be like, what is that? That was weird. And he saw that multiple times. He himself mentions, there's a beauty of this is you can actually have a lot of, if you speak Arabic, you can actually go and read a lot, listen to a lot of his lectures. A lot of the stories, first-hand stories and accounts of what he has done, all of them are available on SoundCloud. So he would have these visions. Now what happened, he became such a good student, and he was so punctual in his assignments. He was so punctual in actually working towards, like if it was known that that teacher was a difficult teacher, but like put me in that class. Like there was a joke about him. When he was trying to select medical school, he was a doctor. When he was trying to select medical school, they said, okay, you got into London, the King's College. He got into all these big colleges, and he's like, where is the college where you don't pass in medical? So they said it's in Baghdad. You will never pass Baghdad. He's like, okay, I'm going to Baghdad. Right? So he was a person who would take on challenges. He was not afraid of challenging himself. His family came from a very meager means, like they didn't have a lot of wealth. They were good family. They had enough money to send their child back in those days abroad, but they were not from an affluent class of Kuwaiti families. It is mentioned that during his dirasa, during his studies in Kuwait, when he was studying in the local universities and local colleges and high schools, he was a person who would always seek to help people. So Allah had given him this ability that he can't sit still. He had to figure out ways to help people. So one of the things that he did was, how many of you are 13, 14, 15? Raise your hands. 13, 14, 15 in that age. 13, 14, 15. Raise, like this is not a hand raise. I don't see that hand. Raise it up, raise it up, raise it up. Okay, so imagine, he would see people, you can put it down. Imagine that the people that were coming from other parts of the world, from poorer countries to work in Kuwait, he would see them standing in the scorching hot sun, waiting for the bus so they can go to the next place of work or back home. And he could not take that. So he used to be given as a scholarship to study. Back in the day in the Arab world, people didn't want to study, so they had to motivate people to say, you come to school, we'll pay you $400 a month. Imagine if they did that here today. Like everybody will be going to school every single day. They will never miss $400. Are you kidding me? I can buy an iPhone after one semester, right? They'll do all the math. So he would get literally equal to 400, 500 riyals back in the day. So he would save 300 riyals, and he got 7 of his friends to save the other 300 riyals, or dinars. It was 30 dinars. And they bought a car. And they created a shift work. And they said, listen, so we're going to find drivers from our households and other places, and this car is going to be used as a transportation car to get these people back and forth from their places so that they don't have to stand in sun. That's the only thing he could do. He didn't have a lot of money, but like, let's buy a car, let's help people. Right? It's just such a small thing, right? Bunch of teenagers here today can get together and say, okay, let's buy a car together. We'll find somebody to drive. I mean, yeah, Canada has like insurance and liability and all of these other things you have to think of. But let's say you figure all of that out with the help of a parent, right? Finding all of these people, factory workers that are standing at Highway 10 and Britannia main intersection, or those main intersections, just getting them only from that intersection to the main bus terminal where they can find their connect, right? How many of you have taken transit and done public transit, and then gone to universities and stuff? It's like time taking, right? Now, unfortunately, back in the day, you would read books, and now you do Instagram, flip, up and down, TikTok. Reality is, yes, time is ticking, talking for all of us. So this is what some of the things that he would do. Then qira'atihi, so his reading. He was an avid reader. It is mentioned that his dad would take him to a market, And many times his dad had to say, like, listen, if you pick up another book, he would literally find another book, any book. Sometimes he'd find something dropped on the ground. He'd pick it up, start reading and bumping into people because he was reading. So he was an avid reader. It is mentioned about him that by the time he was the age 17, he had read over 28,000 books. This is in a country that did not have books. Right? So this is in a country where they had a ban on bringing books in the country. Every book had to be stamped, approved by the ministry. Right? You can't have any books. Okay? How many books did he read? 70. How many? 28,000. 28,000? I never said 20. Did I say 28,000? Oh, sorry, my bad. 17,000. Did I say 28,000? So he read 17,000 books. Still, yani, it's a good number. It's a really good number. Okay? Then, this is something that is going to be important for teenagers to listen. Okay? When he was 7 years of age, from the time he was 7 until he became a doctor, he never missed his fajr in the masjid. From the time of, many of us can't say that. Right? As adults, we can't say that we didn't miss fajr in the masjid. Now we have excuse, no, but it was the pandemic. Right? It was not the pandemic, right? It was the pillow. Okay? So he never missed fajr. It is mentioned about him that he had a constant habit of reading about Islam, but he was also an avid reader in other sciences. So he had read books in psychology. He had read a lot of fiction novels at that time that was written in Arabic for him. And he started picking up the English language at a very early age because he recognized that this is a language that is necessary. In 1963, he finished his most of his education that he could do in Kuwait. Then he was accepted in 3 places, in America, in Egypt, in London, in medicine. So he was an A student. God gave him a scholarship right away. He was accepted. But again, as I told you, he chose to go to Baghdad. He's like, no, I'm going to go to Baghdad because that's where people fail. So I need to go in there and I want to make sure that I pass. And he ended up actually becoming very successful over there. He passed with A grades in that. He got, then he moved to Liverpool University. He studied in Liverpool University in UK and he got a diploma in internal medicine, advanced diploma in internal medicine. Then after, when he finished, he moved to, he came to Canada. He came to Canada in April in 1974. Then he did specialization in Canada in internal digestive system. So he was specialized in amrad al-batiniya, internal diseases and a digestive system track. He specialized in that. While he was here for those 3 years or 4 years, he was specializing 1974 to 1978, those 4 years that he was here, he recognized that the Muslims were lost in Montreal. They had no way of collecting. They were from all different parts of life and nobody had a collection, like nobody was gathering together. So he said, what do? He started the first Islamic Society, or MSA today, back in that day in 1974 in University of Montreal. He started the first Islamic Society. He was from one of the 3 founding members. Then they got together and said, it's not enough for us to all Muslims to gather. What about the Muslims that are living in Montreal? So he's like, okay, let's go and build a masjid. I mean, this is 1974. Like today, people are scared to build a masjid. This is 1970. They say, no Muslims, there's nothing. Right? So one thing you find in his lifestyle is he didn't see the impossibility of things as an end. He was like, if it's not possible, it doesn't matter. I just have to have the right idea, need to go on. He started, today, if you look up on your phones, Fatima al-Zuhra Masjid was actually founded by him and it's still available today in Montreal. It's a very small masjid, but it's still there. People pray in that masjid. Then he returned back in 1979. He spent another year. Between 1979 to 1980, he specialized in London in other specializations before returning back to Kuwait. Now he comes back to Kuwait in 1980, and he is appointed as a specialist in some of the hospital, in the main hospital which was run by the king at that time, Mustashfa al-Sabah. Sabah is the royal family of Kuwait. It was there, so he was there from 1980 to 1983. Then comes the role of a pious wife. She says, listen, till when are you going to run after money? He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, look, Allah has given you ability to look at visions and look at things. And when you look at a vision or when you look at something, Allah has given you that ability. You can get things done. There are so many things we need to do in the world. Until when are you going to run after being a doctor? Enough is enough. You've worked for 3 years. That's enough money for us to survive. So he quit his job. And he said, what do we do? He's like, okay, you know what? There's a lot of work to be done. Right around that time, the wife of Jabir al-Sabah, the king of, the Emir of Kuwait, she said, listen, I've been wanting to build a masjid. Why don't you take the project of building the masjid? You and your wife and your kids, go somewhere, go build a masjid. So he's like, okay, we'll go to Asia. So they decided to go to Asia. Subhanallah, this is how the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala works. They were about to take a flight. Something happened to the flight. Flights got cancelled. They were at the airport. And Rahman is like, listen, we have gone this far. We're not turning back now. So we're going to go to the ticketing counter and get another ticket and decide where we're going right now. He's like, but the money was for building the masjid in somewhere in Asia. He's like, it's a masjid. We'll build it wherever. So they're like, what's the next flight and where is it going? They're like, it's going to Africa, in Malawi. All right, let's go. He just literally at the airport, like, packed. We're all ready to go. We got to build a masjid. Let's go. Right? Back then, they didn't have SMS telling the princess, hey, by the way, the plan changed. Masjid built in Malawi instead of Pakistan. Right? Like, that didn't happen. So he decided, and he's like, okay, I'm leaving. And literally, he was at the airport, plan changed, and then he went to Malawi. So he goes to Malawi and he finds, I actually heard one of his lectures, which is on SoundCloud, and I'll try to describe to you what he saw in Malawi in his own words in Arabic, but I'm going to paraphrase it. He says, I enter and I have some food. So he took some food, he bought some food from the main city, and he's like, let's go to the poor areas and find some village. They found a village of Binan. They went to that village. They found a woman. He said, I saw that woman and the children. إِذِ الْتَسَّقَ اللَّحْمُ بِالْعَظْمِ. I saw that the bone and the skin had connected with one another. I.e., you could see the bones of those children. So I told my daughter, go and get some daqiq, some atta, some flour, and some of the stuff we brought and give it to her. So she looked at it and she says, why are you giving me this? It's like, you guys are in need. Like, you just told me you haven't had food in almost 3 days. He said, no. I am not in need. My neighbor across the street hasn't had food for 8 days. You need to go and give that food to her, not to me. I'm good. Alhamdulillah, we ate food 3 days ago. This is him telling the story himself. And he says, I go to that other family. And we find that that family had moved literally 5 or 6 days ago, walking through the desert from the village where they used to live. And because of the drought that had taken place at that time, all of their entire flock of 40 cattle and 50 sheep, everything had died. And they had lost 2 of their own children. And now they said, where do we go? Let's get into the desert. They walked 4 days straight in the desert without any water or food. And another 4 days that they were there, and that was the 8th day that they were there in that village, and they had had no food. So Rahman he said, I think building a masjid is not a very wise thing. They need something more. And at that point, he had 2 choices. He had a choice to be a passive donor. He goes back to Kuwait, uses the connections with all the royal family, collects some money, finds some charity and says, okay, you guys take care of these people. But he's like, nope, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be the one who is going to physically go in and change all of these things. So he told his wife and kids, guess what? We're not going back. They're like, what? We just came to build a masjid. Like, we do need to go back. He's like, nope, we're not going back. I've made a decision. As a family, we're going to stay here. We're going to connect with other families, and we're going to help this community over here. He spent the rest of his 29 years of his life serving the Muslims in Africa. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that now. So, his help, so let's just look at the country Malawi first. Okay? Malawi, when he arrives, Abdul Rahman as-Sumayyid, right? He finds that Dinul Islam, Islam is the primary religion, but nobody knows anything about Islam. As a matter of fact, there's Christian missionaries that are working there, and they happen to be, taking all of these Muslims and making them do all of these things and making them pray to Jesus and providing them food and saying, look, Jesus provided you food, you got to believe in it, hallelujah. Right? Like all of that thing, yeah. And people are like, yeah, he is right. Like we prayed and we got food. Imagine somebody who has not eaten. Imagine you if you had not eaten for 8 days. What would you think? Like, yeah, man, I made dua. This food came. It's working. Like whatever I was believing in is not working. So he couldn't take that, right? And speaking of Christian missionaries, this is a tangent. And this is a planned tangent, not an unplanned tangent. Okay? Just so you guys know. Like, there are other speakers, they have unplanned tangents. This is a planned tangent. I have 3 tabs open for this tangent. I intended to do it. Like, what do you guys know about Mother Teresa? She was a famous nurse. What was she known for? I think younger the kids don't know. Maybe the older people would know. Yeah? Okay. And what else? In India, and what was she known for?
She was known for spending her entire life serving poor people.
Yeah, really good person, right? Yeah. So anybody has any negative image in their minds about her? You have? Speak.
Basically, a lot of the money that she collected, she was always pushing back to the church. And secondly, as an example, one of the things was she always austerity.
She always what?
I mean, she believed in austerity, not spending a lot of money. To the extent that even when they were using needles for injecting patients, she did not believe in using disposables or one time. She used to boil those needles, and sometimes even those needle tips had become blunt, and then they would still continue to use those, which was very painful.
Yeah. So, do you remember the discussion we had about agenda setting theory? And I've been talking about this, that, we've been a victim of agenda setting in our history. So if you remember, we talked about the 3 concepts, where there is a reality, there's an agenda, and then we need to create a new perception of the reality so that people don't realize what the reality was. A new perceived reality becomes the source of people adhering to the agenda. So, University of Ottawa, University of Montreal, University de Montreal, however you want to call it. I'm very bad in French. Anybody who's French, please speak. Right? They published an article in 2013, I believe. You can look it up. It's called The Dark Side of Mother Teresa. They collected over 538 documents. Let me just give you the exact number. I don't want to say this number without... They collected, one second. So 502 documents out of which documented the life and works of Mother Teresa. After they went and sifted through, they found that there was 195 duplicate documents, so they still had 287 documents. And they did a massive analysis over her actions, what she did, and they actually found that quite the contrary. She was basically a poster child for a Catholic Church. She was doing some heinous crimes in the name of Christianity, But the image that they were able to craft for her in the world, and this is something that our Canadian universities have researched about it. This came up because when they were going to provide her sainthood, they were going to make her the saint in Catholic Church. People rose up and they said, "What are you talking about? She was like a this and that, like entire." I don't want to talk about it because you guys can go read about it. Like the entire, like a researched journal, peer-reviewed article, journal on this. This is really shocking, right? But you've never heard about it. Because what happens is media and the agenda setting, they're just going to like shove it right underneath the rug. You're never going to hear about this thing. Ever. You'll never hear about it. Many of you over here, except one person because he happens to be from India, right? And you have had a secondary narrative there. And he happened to, yes? Yeah. 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 Very no. And also, what was that person? Yeah, and there's so many documentaries. What was the priest that she defended? Can somebody look up? His name was ending with McGuire. There was a priest that she defended. That priest was sentenced to life for 25 years. His last name was McGuire. I don't remember his first name. Just type in Mother Teresa McGuire or something. I think it was Dennis McGuire. So he was sentenced to life for 25 years. He died, I believe, on 31st of December somewhere in Donald McGuire. Yes, Donald McGuire. And he was sentenced 1,000 children he had molested. And she defended him. And she said you cannot remove his title as a priest. And she was the blockage. Rather, she brought him to India, and there are cases of over 210 girls that filed the complaints against him. Okay? You never hear about these things. This is called agenda settings. This is how they set our mind frames. And then when it comes to our heroes and our figures, then it is all, literally, if you go to Wikipedia and you type Abdurrahman Sumayyid, you will never hear about any of his accomplishments. He was a great philanthropist, 1, 2, 3, done. Now the same Wikipedia page, if you go in Arabic, it doesn't look like it's the same page. I'm like, why is it that Wikipedia can't translate that existing Wikipedia Arabic page? Why? Like, I just don't get it. They can't simply just do like Google Translate, you have all this technology. This is agenda setting, okay? So keep that in mind when you're talking about these figures and we're going through these references. So in Malawi, he goes in there and finally the princess insists that you have to build a masjid. So he's like, all right, I'm going to build a masjid. So he builds a masjid in Malawi. Then he starts these clinics for aitam, for orphans, all across the country. I'm going to give you the numbers later. But just, there's so many countries that he has impacted that I can't go literally and talk about every single one of these numbers. Okay? Then it is mentioned that many times Abdurrahman as-Sumayyid would walk alone with his team, walking village to village. There are pictures of him where he was crossing he had to wade through some water, and they had like alligators there, and his pictures of him like, oh look, I just found this thing. And there were times where there were lions that chased him. Okay? But he had one goal, which was that these people don't know Islam. Many of them have become Christians, and I need to bring them back to Islam. Many of them are Christians, and we need to help them become Muslim. So not only Malawi, he worked in Malawi. Then when he was done from Malawi, it is mentioned that he, just in Malawi alone, he had more than 8,600, what is this called? 8,600 wells that he dug. Okay? 8,600 wells that he dug. Do the math. So over 29 years, he dug 8,600 wells. How many wells a day? Roughly a well a day. It's around 10,000. So almost 0.8 a well. So every day and a half, he was digging a well for the 29 years that he was there. Okay? Not only that, he recognized that this change that I want to bring in this country cannot happen without education. So he said, I'm going to embark on education. He started a program funded by Kuwait government and so many other governments, Qatar government at that time, and he prepared more than 4,000 da'is and Quran teachers that he sent on missions across Africa. This is somebody who lived in our times. He died in 2013. We've never heard about him. Right? Like, who's that? We have no idea. Because we don't, people don't want us to know about him, right? There's just not random that, we never heard about him. Then in Somalia, I'm done with Malawi, let's go to Somalia, right? He goes to Somalia, he finds this group, which is today a problem, till today a problem, the Shabab group, right? So he says, listen, the solution is we need to have an alternate group that is tackling that extreme mentality. So he goes and starts a university, he starts a madrasa, Jam'iyya Bi'awn al-Mubashir, and then he opens, when he goes over there in Somalia, he says the only way we're going to be able to change the minds of these people who have joined Shabab is by educating the children at early age so they don't fall prey to such sects. So he started creating lots of madaris across the entire Asima, Mogadishu, and all of these places. Then he went to Kenya. Today's finance minister of Kenya, the finance minister of Kenya, he is an orphan that went through the entire system of Sheikh Abdul Rahman as-Sumayyid until he became an educated person through university and became a minister in a country. Okay, he has an interview on Al Jazeera in Arabic language. I think it's a 5-minute interview where he talks about his journey of how he was an orphan and his mom was killed and his dad was killed, and how if Sheikh Abdul Rahman Sumayyi would not be here, I would not be today ruling, I would not be part of this country's decision-making group. So in Kenya, he had a huge impact on people. In Kenya in 2001, he said, okay, he only had money to start. This is very important. He didn't have a lot of money at that time. So in 2001, he had only money to sponsor 30 orphans. So he's like, you know what? It's okay. We'll start. Allah is going to bring more. Okay? And then the minute he started, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started sending him lots of help. And people started donating wealth upon wealth, money. People started donating their entire, in their will. Take 25% of my wealth of whatever it is and give it to this. So at that point he said he has to build a charity. It is called Direct Aid, available today. It's called Direct Aid that only focuses on doing work in Africa. Al-Awn al-Mubashir. And all of us, any one of you can donate to that aid. It is a government supported also now, with Kuwaiti government also part of the board, so they make sure that the funds are disseminated appropriately. Then, if I just keep going, the countries upon countries, there's so many countries. Assalamu alaikum. Do you want to do a lecture? So you guys all listen to the lecture. Beautiful, mashallah. Okay, amazing. Do you want the mic? No? Okay. I offered. Then Abdul Rahman as-Sumayyid, despite the fact that he would eat very little, what happened was he got a stroke. In 2001, he got a brain stroke. And he became paralyzed in certain portions of his arms, 2001, okay? And they said, you have to go back. And he's like, nope, I can't stop this. It's just one arm. Like, my rest of the body still works. What are you talking about? So he carried on his mission until he got his second stroke, and he still didn't give up. At that point, he was not able to be mobile. So you see pictures of him. He's very heavy. He's like 140 kilograms, very big, 6'3" giant man, like very heavy. Then he got another stroke, third time. And with this one, he also got a heart attack. So they said, okay, you know what? Now we have to take you back. Like, this is enough. Like, Africa doesn't have hospitals to take care of you. So at that point, he said, only on one condition, that I appoint somebody from my group that is going to take care of this project. And he appointed somebody by the name of Sheikh Ali, an African person. We'll talk about him later. So then Abdul Rahman Sumayyat, he goes back, he is admitted into ICU. It is mentioned that the last few days of his life that he was living, he would be in coma. And he would come out of the coma in ICU. He would open his eyes. There's videos of him like opening his eyes. And the first thing he's asking is, what is the state of da'wah in Africa? Have more people accepted Islam? Are they entering Islam? Are how many projects have you initiated since I was like sleeping? Then he goes back into a coma. Then at that point was the first time that the world actually got to know about it, because a very famous scholar in Saudi by the name of Sheikh Rahman Arifi, Sheikh Muhammad al-Arifi, he actually did a khutbah on him. His khutbahs are watched by like 3-4 million people. And then the word of Sheikh Abdul Rahman Sumayyat's death became famous. Everybody started talking about it. And then there were posts written about him making dua. There was a collective dua in the entire Arab world that was made for him, for his shifa. And at that point, remember the dream that I told you about? Remember the dream that I told you about? The dream was that it's a land of animals and there's this light that is coming out. So right about a day before his death, he gets a letter, or he gets somehow a message given to him that his long dream of building a university, an Islamic university in Kenya, by the name of Al-Jami'a Al-Ummah, the Ummah's University. That project, through all the process of the government, has been approved. So when he wakes up, he hears the news, oh, it's been approved. Then he says, now my dream as a child has come true. The dream that I used to see in the desert, visions that I used to have, has come true. And then at that point, rahimahullah, he passed away. Now, we can't, if I just go into like the amount of awards that he got in the world, is just like Bill Gates is talking about it. Like people are talking about what he did and what he accomplished, not being from like a tech startup company. Like all of these big guys, they have trillions of dollars, billions, well, they can do this kind. He didn't have any of that wealth. He just had a very solid vision. Now I'm going to quickly go over some of his accomplishments, okay? Some of his accomplishments that he did over the time of 29 years. You guys ready for this? This is where things get really interesting. Because for us to realize that 29 years, oh, I'm only 29. Oh, I'm 50. Well, you can have another 20 years of life and you can accomplish all of these things, right? So it starts off, he says, it mentions that he actually participated in more than 102 conferences for poverty. How many conferences have we participated in poverty? We don't. He's like, listen, they're talking about poverty. Like, this is an issue. I need to go and know what they're talking about if I need to solve it. If we're concerned about poverty, if you're concerned about something, you go, if you're in your field, if you're programming, IT, you go to conferences in IT. Right? He attended more than 102 conferences in poverty back in the day. Like today, you can virtual, YouTube, all of that. He did that. Then he established more than 100 masjids, Islamic centers. Marakiz al-Islamiyya al-Mutakamila. Complete Islamic centers. And it had, those Islamic centers housed more than 1,450 teachers and their housing. All of that was taken care of by Abdul Rahman al-Sumayyat and the imams of the masjid. Then he, from his own investments that he had made in Kuwait at that time, some investments that he had made at this time, from his own investments, he funded 95,000 students he funded with his own money. He's like, okay, listen, your entire education's on me. 95,000. Okay? Then after that, that was not just it. Then he's like, okay, and these are Muslims. Then he said, I have a lot of rich friends, so I can actually go and find people that can fund all of this. So he had more than 200 scholarships that were established, i.e. rich people funding towards a chair scholarship of this person, that was used to generate a lot of money throughout the entire African continent. Now, after that, he said, listen, we need to do agriculture because people die of food. How many million meters do you think of plantation that he created? A million meters squared. So the amount of projects that he did, they did the calculation of the areas covered by his agricultural project, and it comes out to 10 million squared of agricultural projects done in Africa. Okay? Then after that, more than 200 education and training centers for women in Africa, long before feminist movement was a thing. Right? Long before that. When you have to do work, you do work. You don't talk about it. Then, after that, he started, now I'm going to list some of the things specific to him. So number one, he built over, who did the 57,000 one? You guys did that? 57,000, right? I gave it to you guys, 57,000. Yeah, 50,000, 50. I gave you guys 50. What's the number I gave you? 57. Actually, why am I reading wrong today? It is 5,700. I don't know. Yeah, 5,700. So how many masjids a day now? 5.3 masjids a day in 29 years. Okay? Then 150,000 yateems that he was taking care of. So the 6,500 were just in Malawi. Total of wells was 9,500 wells. How many wells a day? 9,500 divided by 10,580. Just almost one well a day. So his entire 29 years of da'wah and philanthropy work, he was literally making a well a day. Right? Prophet ﷺ said, أَفْضَلُ صَدَقَةٍ حَفْرُ الْبِئِرِ. One of the best sadaqah is bi'r. Like you digging the well for people. That's why Ibn Abbas used to say that if somebody dies from your family, then make a well for them. Because that is one of the best sadaqahs. Then he built over 860 schools, 4 universities, and 204 Islamic centers across the world. He built over 124 hospitals in Africa, and more than 840 clinics in entire Africa. There are around 890 Quran madrasas alone in Africa. He distributed more than 6 million copies of the Quran. How many? 6 million. وَأَسْلَمَ عَلَى يَدِهِ more than 11 million. Who got 11 million? Can you tell me how many a day? 11 million people accepted Islam at his hands. How many people was he converting daily? 1,039 people daily. Imagine where is he going into? Where are we going in Jannah? Where is he going in Jannah? We're like, hey, Islam alaikum. It's like he's there, he's way up there. This is not somebody who lived lots of many years ago. This is somebody he is on YouTube, he's on SoundCloud. Okay? Then, oh yeah, by the way, remember the Sheikh Ali that I told you about? So during the time that he was in his bed in coma, 8 months of sickness, this Sheikh Ali that he appointed, he also went and converted another 500,000 people in 8 months. So this Sheikh Ali that he appointed, he went to Kenya, Djibouti, and Madagascar and converted another 500,000 people while he was in his deathbed for 8 months. Okay, so a lesson for all: appoint right people for the job. Right? If you appoint the right person, they will, they would do things. So 6 million copies of Quran given out to new Muslims. Okay? Overall, total distribution of the Quran. So this is 6 million towards just new Muslims. The total distribution of the copies of the Quran, how many do you think he did? To Muslims and non-Muslims combined? 10 million. More. More? Less? Yes, 51 million. Okay? And he distributed more than 500 million small pamphlets of da'wah to non-Muslim communities across Africa. And many of which was his team of 50, 60 people walking through the deserts of Africa, because they were not well funded. Towards the end of his life, it became really well funded. But a lot of that, you see pictures of him sitting in a village with the entire village, and it's like, okay, here's the pamphlet in your language. Wait a minute, we have it in the car. That organization skills. He had boxes labeled with each language, translations coming in. Just fascinating, this person's life. Subhanallah. He wrote lots of books. One of the best books that has been written about him is called Kitab Akhil Habib in Arabic, which was printed in 2014. And unfortunately, there's no books written on him in English. This book is about him. He had lots of books written. He has a book called Kitab Labbaik Africa. Africa is calling, I responded. He has a kitab called Dam'atul Africa, the tears of Africa. Then he has another book called The Effects of Christianity in Africa, and he talks about his stories from his life that he firsthand did. If you go to his charity Direct Aid, he has and about the Sheikh, you're going to find some portions where you can actually listen to. If you know a little bit of Arabic, you should listen to some of his interviews. That literally, if you put your headphones on, you're listening to that interview for an hour, you're going to be crying, because he tells you stories firsthand that he has seen. And he's like, how is it that, he's like, today, our children, if they don't get their desired meal, it was supposed to be pizza, it's shawarma today. Oh man, shawarma? Seriously, like shawarma? Like, I just don't like I had a person once, we were giving them free food at an event, and the person came to me and says, listen, if you're getting me shawarma, just make sure it's falafels. I'm like, what? Like, A, you're not paying for it. B, you don't, I don't need to give you anything for this event. But if you're getting anything, be thankful. And then the person is like, why? Well, bread does something to me. I'm like, well, last week you had pizza with chicken and you were completely fine. So I don't know what you're talking about, right? This affluent lifestyle that we have given to our children, as much as it's good for us, but it's always sometimes also good that we take them away from that. Take a break from meat and all of that for a week. Don't just cook dal every day. I'm serious. Just for them. No, just for them to get that, there could be life. You don't know, your life can change. Things can happen. You may not have that affluence. You may not have the money to buy food. So, hey man, guess what? We're only going to eat, dal roti for the next 4 days. Or if you dal, then you go to chicken. Okay? And then, rahimahullah, he passed away. Those are just honestly speaking, I just read and skimmed through his life, a beautiful article written by a Sheikh about him. But if I just show you just on the map here, one second, where is it? Right, this is just if you just go through the Arabic, I don't even think I read most of it. We're not even halfway yet. Now we're halfway. This is all about him. I mean, you can do an entire, a series on, and this is just one part, and then you have other parts there that talks about different aspects of his stories and stuff like that. But again, we try to keep it short so that, families have to go back and sleep, inshallah. So what did we learn? That's the whole point of these stories. Let's do this now. What did we learn from his life? Yeah. Not to be greedy? What do you mean?
Don't ask for a lot of stuff and be thankful to Allah.
Be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with what we have. Right? Yes. Sorry? To be grateful. Okay, excellent. Yes. Okay, go.
Even though that in this modern society that Muslims aren't represented as good people anymore,
Beautiful. Don't look at what people are doing to you. Focus and be influential in your own manner. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Subhanallah. Right? Events are planned for you. Right? You just gotta accept them. If he had said, "What am I doing in Malawi? I was supposed to be in Pakistan eating pie," right? It's like that too from Lahore. Yes. You gotta speak louder. I didn't hear. Yes, making wells. Okay. Yes. Beautiful. That's the main lesson here, right? Like, don't look at what you have, right? Don't look at, a famous self-help guru, Zig Ziglar. He passed away. Remember him? Okay, you remember, right? So how many of you know Zig Ziglar? Zig Ziglar, salespeople know Zig Ziglar very well. It's like, you just gotta sell. Salespeople. So Zig Ziglar used to say something really powerful. He was a very devout Christian, right? He used to say that when you're headed in a direction, in a journey, and you can see steps 1, 2, and 3, but you wanted to head to 10, then as a Christian, or for us as a Muslim, you take the steps 1, 2, and 3 with this hope in God that when you get to 3, He's going to show you 4, 5, and 6. And when you get to 6, He's going to show you 7, 8, 9, and 10. Many times we don't begin because I don't have this, or I don't have that, I don't have funding, I don't have idea, I don't have this thing. Let me get everything perfect, and then I will begin. Right? Or sometimes people do this. It's like, have you ever seen those people, gonna do people? Like, I'm gonna do this, man, this summer. Oh man, it's just such a nice weather. Summer just comes around very often. Like, let me just enjoy this fall time. I'm gonna take care of it. Come fall, man, this fall's been like weird, huh? Like the weather's been around, like off and stuff like that. Man, winter time, we're just gonna hunker down. We're gonna be in our home. Then I'll get this done. Right? Winter time happens, man. This is a bad winter. Right? Like, springtime, I'm gonna spring into action. Come springtime, what happens? Springtime, you know what? That shelf that your wife asked you to make is still waiting. Right? Right? It still waits. The dishwasher that your husband was supposed to change has not been changed. It's gonna be, it will get done one day. Right? It's very relevant. Okay? Huh? So these things are so important, right? That you do what you can. Right? As another person, he said, the difference between successful people and people who are not successful is very little. What is that difference? Successful people do everything they possibly can and do it in the best possible manner they can. That's it. So what's the difference between you and somebody else who's super successful? They took steps with every possible thing they can do. And when they ran out of possibilities, Allah showed them more possibilities and more possibilities and more possibilities and more possibilities. And they kept on doing, but didn't wait. Okay? Yes, sister. Beautiful. A plan. First step, a journey of 1,000 miles begin with first paratha. I meant like first step. I meant, you know what I meant. Okay. Yes. Oh, first shawarma actually. Journey of 1,000 miles begin with the first shawarma. Yes. Go ahead.
I also think you also need to educate yourself as an example.
Yes.
You need to educate in terms of how to amplify the work. Even if you're not doing the work, you amplify other people.
Sure.
Organize an agenda theory itself, like I think it's so important, especially the teenagers right now.
Yeah.
Even if you're not doing body work, even with professional, personal work, you need to know your agenda and how you amplify your work.
Beautiful. So, and he's saying that understanding the fabric in which you're working in. But what's more important in that is just reading. Like just reading. Now if you can't read, alhamdulillah, Allah has brought you in this world with Audible. You can listen, right? Like at least listen. And with Audible, if you get used to listening to it at 3 times the speed, you can finish a book in 2 hours. Seriously, 3 times, 3.5. Like some of the CEOs, like you watch some of the YouTube videos, they have gotten into the habit of listening to audiobooks at 4 times the speed, and they will listen to that one book every single day 10 times. Like say 10 days in a row. So that information is stuck in their subconscious. They're literally working out and listening to that, and their brain processes. It's hard. It's hard at the first. Like, I started with like 2.5, 3. Yeah, so now I listen to audiobooks at 3. My kids laugh at me like in the car. They're like, how do you even understand? I'm like, I understand everything. It's just practice. You practice. But now I can listen to the 8-hour book or 10-hour book divided by 3. How many? 3 hours, 3.5 hours. But I can listen to it in like 2 trips to London. Done. Right? Again, it's about reading. If you can't read, happen to have a work time, then there's no excuse for us not to provide information to our brains. And also very important information for our stomach, which is shawarmas, very important. Where is Brother Hassan? Brother Hassan. So if we can have families go up, and then Hassan is going to, where are we? We're there? Okay, so if we can have families, please, they've cleaned that area, so do not eat. Grab your shawarmas, and you're more than welcome to go outside and eat, inshallah. Next week, we're going to watch the story, documentary on Mi'mar Sinan. So it'll be a movie night. If you want to bring your pajamas, if you want to feel comfortable here, feel free. You want to bring your blankets. You want to bring some things. You want to sit down and chill and relax and watch. Feel free to do so, inshallah. It's a beautiful documentary, and then we will start back in Jan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And Hassan, Brother Hassan or Hassan? Hassan. Brother Hassan is going to guide you guys. So families, if one family at a time can go up, and then he will give you the shawarmas, inshallah. And we'll see you next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.